powered by SkillsHACK. To talk a little about SkillsHACK, at SkillsHACK, it is our endeavor to enable an easy and convenient learning platform which will facilitate upskilling and reskilling amongst our learners. The ethos of SkillsHACK stems from the need of continuous learning. There is no dilemma today that learning is a need across life cycles for students, young working professionals, and matured individuals alike. It has emerged as a key requirement to stay relevant and updated in a dynamic and ever-changing environment. However, the challenge we are often faced with is the paucity of time, of course, robust and crisp content, and most importantly, and this is where I would like to pay a little attention, clear learning outcomes. And this is where SkillsHACK comes in to make a difference. We will host a repository of short duration courses, anywhere between 2.5 hours, with a blended learning methodology at convenient time slots. Our mentors and educators who come from across industries with a niche expertise rank amongst the top 1% of the industry experts. Their invaluable inputs would undoubtedly be of great interest to the learners. Today, we have gathered here to be able to dwell on how upskilling and reskilling has emerged as the success mantra in the current times. I am joined by an august group of panelists whom I take the pleasure of introducing to you. Umesh Rateja, a seasoned professional and an HR transformational leader. He looks to inspire people, give them a motive, and guide them to pursuit. With over 25 years of experience in strategic HR, his inputs for the workforce wishing to their respective domains is invaluable today. Sandeep Seth, a digital transformational leader. Sandeep comes with a rich experience of 27 years, of which the last 8 years is as an entrepreneur in the space of technology, AI, and data science. He is now pursuing the quest of something very interesting, which is called decision science. Decision science is emerging as the logical yet unearthed step from data science. I'm sure we will get some valuable knowledge nuggets from Sandeep in this direction today. Punita Parekh, a content market expert and how. Cut me and I bleed content is her go-to line. A media veteran for over a decade, her rich experience in the domain of content marketing is a skill that is imperative and sought after in our current times. Most organizations of any reckon have transitioned from traditional marketing to digital marketing, and the process is on. We shall hear more from Punita on this today. Over to you, Umesh.
Thank you, Neelakshi. But before we proceed any further, I think it's only fair to also introduce our moderator, Neelakshi. Neelakshi Mukherjee, a leadership coach and a trainer with over 24 years of experience in the field of HR and training. So I have a friend here, who would be joining me in a lot of stuff which we discuss. Neelakshi has been aspiring to develop robust strategies for organizations in areas of transformational HR, leadership mantras, situational and adaptive styles of leadership has been her areas of focus and has been her forte. Thank you, Neelakshi, for moderating yet another session of ours. Look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much for
having a
that,
very
Umesh.
interesting discussion.
Thank you so much for that, Umesh. So I'll take up the discussion from here today, and my first question would be to you, Umesh, since you look at the skilling industry very, very closely, and that is something which you're dealing with at a daily basis. Why do you see upskilling and reskilling taking predominance in the days to come, if not already relevant? And what are those skills that organizations are typically looking for today?
Uh, I think the way learning has been perceived conventionally and the way learning is being consumed today, there is a sea change. And I think pandemic has really changed the way we not only just do business, but the way we learn. I was going through a report of World Economic Forum, which was published in October 2020. And it said that that there are going to be somewhere around 85 million jobs which are going to be displaced, and there are going to be another 95 million new type of jobs, which are going to come in. And I think, given that background, since the time came until now, about 2 years, I think we are seeing this reality hitting us, and hence, what is happening is more and more organizations are realizing that is a focus area, because by doing so, they are not only giving fresh avenues to their existing workforce, in terms of continuing to work with them, bringing in more value to the work, uh, learning new disciplines, because the business is changing rapidly,
Absolutely.
and there's no rocket science today when we say that machines are going to take over a lot of stuff which we are doing. A lot of transaction work has already started moving in those areas.
True.
So hence, how do we look at learning changing? In terms of, if you largely put them into three critical segments. One, the young workforce, the young adults who are at the fulcrum of stepping into industry. The second is the workforce which is very much within the ambit of trying to reskill and upskill themselves. Third, which is a very large segment, which not much is being done in that area, is the senior workforce.
The
As
mature
we call it,
workforce.
or
That's
the
right.
mature workforce, and typically we call them as mid-career, workforce, which is in the age of
Absolutely.
about 45 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's an area where technology is an area where they are looking at working very extensively. They're looking at professional skills, coming in. They're also looking at foreign languages. That's an
Absolutely.
area which is very, very critically being seen.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about young adults, especially who are the fulcrum of getting into the organization areas, I think digital age literacy is, while digital comes naturally to them. It's the literacy from making sure that what are the kind of opportunities they have, for
Mm-hmm.
which they need to be prepared to get more value when they had to go to the
Mm-hmm.
organization. you
Mm-hmm.
know Managing time, managing money, stress management. uh, these are some of the critical areas, not to forget a very critical area, which is achievement orientation. you know
Absolutely.
these are some of the behavioral areas. While technically we are talking about problem based, AI based, we are talking about technology, we are talking about data sciences, we are talking about product design, innovation, leadership. I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you actually ask me what are the top 5 or 6 areas, the way I see it, I see AI, management leadership, analytics, machine learning, digital transformation, critical creativity as the key areas from my side.
I would just add one quick. You were very interestingly segmentizing the population, and one very potent emerging segment is women returning to work, and after some haul, and that is a very enterprising segment because they have something to prove. They want to come back to the workforce. They want to do things differently, and they're also very open to learning and taking up new ideas and taking up new skills. So I would also put a lot of emphasis on that segment of the workforce, along with the three that you mentioned. And through the discussion that we have today, would urge on the rest of our panelists to also kind of put some kind of a focus on these segments that we spoke of, because that makes it easier to kind of implement and execute.
Absolutely, absolutely. I purposely didn't segregate it from that point of view, purely because I wanted the discussion to be a little more inclusive and not to be a little
Absolutely.
gender biased. But
Absolutely.
certainly that focus area is there.
So Sandeep, Umesh touched upon few of the key emerging areas, of which data sciences definitely is one of them. AI definitely is one of them, and we were just speaking about how this entire marketing, platform has moved from traditional brick and block marketing to digital marketing. Now, which is where you come as a very key fulcrum to the entire episode. So, how do you see this? Where do you see the deficiency to begin with, and how do you see this emerging as a fruitful exercise when we do the reskilling and upskilling exercise for the workforce?
Good question. And before I get into that, I just wanted to let everyone know that while I'm pursuing this concept and evangelizing the concept of decision science, this white light you see falling on my head, okay, it is not a sign of any enlightenment that I have received. It's just a very testy light. Okay. Okay, right. So, jokes apart, just segueing from what Umesh had mentioned, he had broken the different segments as students, young professionals, and seasoned professionals. And of course,
That's right.
I think women who are returning back to the workforce can also be then put into these three broad segments. Now, what we have seen is that periodically there are a lot of upheavals which happen in the industry, right? In fact, if you see right now, we are amongst one of the worst job cuts in the technology sector, right? So I am based in Gurgaon, and it's a cold, windy, and it's raining outside, and probably reflects the mood of the global economy as well. So before I answer the question, let me just ask: have you guys been following the news about the job cuts?
Intently.
Yes.
Right. So it's very sobering what we are hearing. There are 90,000 job cuts which have already happened in India in 2022. And these job cuts started happening, I think, around September, October timing. So we have a full year of job cuts ahead of us. Global figures already, Jan is not over yet, and there are 70,000 job cuts which have already happened in the US, in the past few weeks alone. These are US figures. Even companies such as Google, who have not really been doing much of job cuts, they are releasing 6% of their workforce, which amounts to releasing 12,000 people. And I can go on and on, right? So
Exactly.
we're in the midst of some very brutal job cuts, and these cuts are periodic, right? So they happen and they happen for a reason. Does anybody know why it is happening? Why these job cuts are happening now?
I'll let anybody take that question.
I had a technical glitch. Sandeep, can you please repeat that question? I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
So the question was, do we know why these job cuts are happening?
Couple of reasons, Sandeep, to the best of my understanding, is one, there are a lot of activities which are being taken over by machines. One. Second, there is also a fair amount of recessionary process which is going on globally, and that's where there's automation which is coming in, and hence um, uh, some amount of impact on those, other than the regular stuff which is total outlook towards the you know
Good answer. Very good answer. So you covered two aspects. One is technology innovation, right? So technology is innovating at such a fast pace, right? So there is exponential evolution of technology now. Many of us would have heard of Chat GPT, and in the Decision Science series, at some point in the next few months, we will do a short course on Chat GPT as well, because this is going to impact literally each one of us, right? Now, ChatGPT has got the potential to literally killing Google. Okay, so and that is one reason why this is a code red at Google. They are letting go of a lot of people who are not core to their future business model, and spending a lot of money now in coming up with a competitor to ChatGPT, which was released by OpenAI. upskill.org, which is funded by Elon and Microsoft and others.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that? That technology innovations are now becoming, much more bigger, broader, orbit shifting, call it whatever. Number two is that the companies are adjusting for all the digitalization which happened during the pandemic. So a lot of the companies, they are digitalized, they did digital transformation projects, and to support a lot of those projects, the IT companies hired in mass trends. Well, now that we have recessionary trends and also a lot of that digitalization has been done, there is a lot of job cuts which are happening. So, why did I go in that direction? The question is really that, right? That as we plan and execute our careers, what can we learn from this latest set of job cuts? Meaning, what can we do to ensure that we are not really impacted by such events? Any thoughts?
Absolutely. So that's where I think this entire discussion stems from, Sandeep. One is, I think to add to what Umesh was saying a while back, I think a lot of roles, right? A lot of roles are gradually not just because of the technology enablement, but because of the sheer nature of the way delivery is happening, they're becoming redundant. And those
Mm-hmm.
people in those roles with those particular skills, those skills are becoming redundant. So if the skills
Right.
itself is becoming redundant, there is no other way but to kind of either kind of go to a completely different direction, which would mean
Mm-hmm.
that you reskill yourself, or if there is a possibility or an opportunity where you can make yourself more valuable in the skill in which you kind of display in the organization, then possibly you upskill yourself. I think the entire
Mm-hmm.
crux of the discussion is what you've asked in this question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful, right? So what I have done is I have looked at, talked to some of my industry peers in my own experience, and seen what or heard what some of the HR heads, like what the HR head of Microsoft has been saying, that how do we
Hmm.
make ourselves resilient to such periodic job cuts, right? So
Yes.
number one is, if you were a student, again, remember, I'm talking of students, young professionals, and then seasoned professionals, right? So for a student, and this is, I'm talking of maybe 2022 figures, 2023 figures will become even worse. In a college, anybody who is wanting a dream job, the figure is more like 1 in 500. Okay, so for every 500 people who apply for that job, now of course there are various tests that these companies have, for example, competitive coding and this and that. But ultimately, after people cross all of those things, even if they have the cutoff GPAs and all of that, there would still be, I'm assuming, about 25, 30 people whose resume reaches the desk of the people who have to choose one from those
That's
25 to 30 very bright students, right?
that's
So how do you do that? How do you really create a whizzing resume that really stands out, right? And there is a method to that process which we'll be touching upon in our courses as well. But it all
Mm-hmm.
starts by first understanding that of the over 50, 60 different role families which exist out there, which are the ones that you have an aptitude for, because chances are very well that you as a student aspiring to get into the workforce will do well in an area which connects with you very well, right, and which you are wired to do well. So one is that you have to take time out to sharpen the axe to build a resume that stands out. Number two is always thinking with respect to 1 to 2 levels up, not just in your hierarchy, but in your business hierarchy as well, right?
That's
And
right.
these people think in terms of integrated strategy, planning, and execution. If I were to create a analogy over here, if the CEO of the company is like the captain of a ship. Now he has come up with a strategy. His objective is to go from point A to point B safely, right? And avoid all the glaciers or all the eddy currents which might be happening along the way. He has to choose a path or the dates for the travel which avoid the risks, right? So that is a strategy which the ship's captain is coming up with. And we as a worker bees, we have to be very clear and enrolled into that strategy. We have to understand that strategy and see that whatever role we have been assigned, how is that playing into meeting the objectives of the captain, right? So that gets into the planning and the execution piece. So people who are, it doesn't matter whether you're a young professional or a seasoned professional. You'll be surprised how many people in, in support roles kind of miss that larger picture, that who's
That's
paying
right.
them money, right?
Very
And
true.
what are their motivations, and how can we uh, help
Absolutely.
in the company's strategy. Number three is creating recognizable business value. Now, what do we think business value is?
I'll let Punita or Umesh take that.
Yeah. So business value would be anything which has got a measurable impact to the financial receipts. So whether that is helping to improve the revenues of the company, or to reduce the costs of the organization, right? Or reduce the risk of the company. It could be anything which is impacting the financial measures of the company, including
Financial
cash
measures
flow.
of the business.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
it's a business value, right? So if we are skilled, and many people don't have that skill set, they are adding value to the company, but they're not able to articulate that, right? And that, I think, is a big need, that people are not
That's a big
really
one.
able to create recognizable business value. Recognizable means you created value, and your leadership said, yes, we recognize the value that you have created. Number four is analytical thinking and problem solving. Survey after survey has basically been telling us that analytical thinking and problem solving is amongst the top three skills that companies look for, irrespective of country and the category or the industry the company operates in, right? But that is easier said than done, right? What exactly does that mean? Does it mean that from tomorrow morning I start eating more dry fruits, and that will give me more gray cells, and that will help me improve my analytical thinking? Maybe, but I think
Correct.
there is a more structured way to doing this. And again, that's something that we teach in our courses on decision science.
That's right. That's right.
Relevant skills at relevant levels. Again, for a lot of techies, they just think that becoming just the expert in one particular skill set is going to be good enough. I think a better option is to first understand that what is it which will make them, thrive in their job. How can you keep yourself relevant? Look at your skill map and then work your way backwards into what are the skills you need, and at which level should those skills be available to you. Again, something that we will be going through in the decision science essentials 3 to 4 hour workshop. Excellent collaboration and communication skills. This is extremely important. In fact,
Very.
many companies they have this 30-second rule, which is if you're in front of your two or three up manager, you only have 30 seconds to present what you have done and the way forward. Right, 30 seconds. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, how do you perfect your pitch? How do you come up with a so-called elevator pitch, which will resonate very deeply with somebody who was 2 or 3 levels up, right? And so, for us, communication is not about a command over any particular language. It's more about
That's
how you structure your thought in a way that it connects very well with your stakeholders.
right. True.
Continuous knowledge sharing and skills upgradation. I think those days are gone where you collected knowledge and you just hoarded knowledge, right?
Hold it
So,
close to heart. Yes.
right, and we have seen all those people in our careers, right? And
Yes.
well, those people have not really gone anywhere much. So people who are able to build their knowledge, for example, if a case study if somebody has a case study in him, did he really create the case study and then share it with others, right? LinkedIn is a great way of knowledge sharing.
That's
Skills
right.
upgradation, right? So, in a smart manner, are we really understanding what our skills map is? Continuously working towards, developing that skills map, and even adjusting the skills map as the need comes. For example, Chat GPT, right? Chat GPT came and hit us about 6 months back. And a lot of people are now going back to the drawing board and seeing that what reskilling do we need to do to take advantage of this new innovation,
That's right.
right? Innovation pipeline. I mean, the ideas of today are the businesses of tomorrow, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We will be contributing to the innovation pipeline. Again, there is a way to come up with innovation, with innovative ideas, and these are things, these procedures, techniques, again, covering in the series on decision science.
Mm-hmm.
Employee versus contractor. What we have been told is that contractors are obviously much easier to let go of. So if you want to retain your job, try to be an employee versus being a contractor. That is number one. Especially when you're a young professional, leaving the employership of a company and becoming a contractor is very risky, because you might be then competing with other people who are much more skilled than you are in your
That's right.
areas,
That's
right?
right.
So get some experience, and then the gig economy is becoming only bigger. So there is a massive gig economy which is powered by the
Mm-hmm.
contractors. But don't be in a hurry to get into that
The contractor
space.
mode. Correct.
Right. And last but not the least, it's about leadership, right? So this is about the 5E model. Again, we'll be covering this in one of the seminars moving forward. The 5E model talks about envision, engage, empower, and execute. I spent 15 years at Procter and Gamble, and the 5E model was a really powerful model to enable people who joined right as interns to the CEO of the company. So it's a very powerful
Mm-hmm.
model. Discuss this more. So these I thought were like the 10 points that we need to keep in mind as we try to our careers, very exciting for us, exciting for the companies that we work with, and we make ourselves, you know, uh, fireproof, if I can use that term,
Yes.
right?
Yes, of course.
Now, if we
That.
were to choose, sorry, any point?
No, no, please continue. Please continue. I'll come to it.
Okay, right. Now, if we were to choose just one of these 10 points, which one would you think is the biggest of the lot, is the most important of the lot?
If I'll take a first shot, and then I'll let the rest of you also take the shots.
Hmm.
See, from
Yeah.
when we talk of a business, I would think if you are being able to create business value and articulating it well enough to make sense to people who are running the business,
Hmm.
I think that would ace the 10, because that's where you're most relevant. If you're talking the financial numbers, and if you're making sense of your role in contributing to that, that according to
Hmm.
me would be an acer. I
So,
would
number
let
three,
you.
you're talking of creating
Yes,
recognizable business value.
that's right, I'm talking about number 3.
Okay, perfect.
What
I
about
think
you,
bang
Punita?
on.
I
Bang
think
on.
my
That
whole
is
idea,
the, go on.
I think the whole approach of any organization, any organizator, startup, or a multinational should work towards having employees take, skill roles or upskill themselves, be it any small course or be it any big course, because I think upskilling is the whole idea of helping employees grow much faster. That is my take.
Absolutely. So I think
Okay.
the upskilling is definitely very important. And before you are able to upskill the employees, creating that skill map is extremely important. And for creating the skill map, you need to understand what is the employee's as is, which is the current state, and what is his desired to be state. And once
That's
that
right.
is clear, then you go through the upskilling program. Okay, great, good
And
point.
there is
So
there,
if
there is a third aspect to what you just said, Sandeep.
yeah,
And
Umesh.
that is, what is the organizational need?
Hmm.
That's
Correct.
extremely critical. What is the current as a state of the individual? What is it that is the to be desired? And third,
Hmm.
what does the organization need? And I think to club it all, obviously tangibility, bringing in tangibility to everything and anything that gets done in the organization,
Hmm.
putting a
Correct.
number, a numeric value in terms of whether
Hmm.
it's quality cost or time, bringing a tangibility to what is being done so that it becomes measurable. And I think that's very important.
I think that's a
Very
very
true.
important point, Umesh, that you have made. You use that term tangibility, right? So, which is another way of saying recognizable, right? So, if you're delivering
That's
something tangible, right, then it's getting recognized by the organization. And
that's right.
believe me, a lot of people, even marketing professionals, I would say, they might be living in of, or even salespeople, right? They might be living in the world of their numbers around market shares and things like that. But exactly how would you articulate the value that you created? There is a science to that, and
Sure.
we cover that under the business understanding pillar of decision science. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so if number three, which is creating recognizable business value, is the most important thing that we should focus on, then the question becomes these: are we clear on what business value are we expected to add, right? If you're in a role where you're not even able to articulate the business value, neither is
That's
your manager, then you need to rethink the role, right? And that is where
absolutely.
leadership comes in, which is you go back to your manager and say, you know what we are working on, something is not really so meaningful to the organization. Let's go and find something which is meaningful. And
Which is
those are the
meaning.
people who will rise and become the leaders of tomorrow.
Touche. Absolutely.
Right? And as we all recognize, that takes courage. And courage really comes from having a very strong skill set, right?
Yes.
Uh,
True that.
right? So, so that's what decision science is all about. It's skilling you in a very smart, efficient, and effective fashion. So, what are the values that you're expected to add? Are you very clear whatever KPIs or metrics you have been handed,
Mm-hmm.
where are the value additions and leakages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a clear plan? How will you amplify the additions and minimize the leakages? Are you
Mm-hmm.
really equipped to add value? And we talked extensively earlier about skill maps. The equipment is really coming from coming up with a skill map and then doing something about getting that value.
Mm-hmm.
And then are you adding value, and then you're really articulating that to the business function leaders, peers, etc. And the articulation component again refers to one of the 9 pillars of decision science, which is communication.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one way to look at how you are adding value to the company is by looking at the company's product life cycle, right?
Sure.
So I'm sure we have seen that before. I will just quickly summarize it. Any product starts very initial embryonic state, then it goes to the growth phase, then it matures, which is it becomes a cash cow, and
Mm-hmm.
finally at some point it then declines away, right?
That's right.
And and then so this is what I was saying, that the big bucks of tomorrow are the ideas of today, right? So there have to be multiple waves of these curves which need to happen through time. And let me take a very quick example. Let's look at the music delivery industry, and let's not go back too far back. Let's just look at the past 30 years, right? Do you remember how we used to consume music about 30 years back?
Tape recorders,
Tape recorders,
Cassettes,
right?
MPs,
Cassettes, right?
cassettes,
Uh, what happened after that? What came after the cassettes?
CDs.
uh, the
CDs,
disc
right?
tape, right?
This,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
What came after
Then internet
CDs?
took over.
Then came digital, MP3s,
DVD.
MP4s,
I
and
Right.
the
iPods
iPod.
So,
came.
yes. So cassettes, CDs, DVDs. Then we had the iPods, right, which were called the solid state devices. And
I think
today,
our
how do we
generation has
consume music?
also seen non-regulated music, which is radio and TV. You get to hear whatever you're being fed. You don't have a choice over your music. So we started from there actually.
We started from there, right? We had access to very few channels. Now there are, a million and one channels on which you can
That's
get
right.
access to music and
And now you
technology.
talk about streaming. The
Hmm.
music gets streamed. Nobody wants to store it.
That's
Streaming,
right.
that's a right term, Umesh, absolutely right. So, in a short space of 30 years, we have gone through 5 of these technology cycles, right? Which means
Absolutely.
Though on average, every cycle has lasted only about 5 to 6 years, right?
Absolutely.
Let's look at the mobile phone industry. Do you think
Classical
that the
example.
mobile phone cycle is 5 years or lesser than that?
I would think lesser. I mean, we started it around 1997, I would think, and today we are at 2023, and it's nowhere near what it started off as. So I would think it would be a much shorter cycle than a 5 years.
Right, much longer cycle. So yeah, so the point to really understand here is that every industry has its own unique product life cycles, and those company CEOs which or their leaderships who don't understand these product life cycles, and the employees in those companies who don't understand these life cycles, they are the ones who will be suffering the most, right? And again,
Absolutely.
these are things that we talk about how to spot these trends depending on the industries that you are in our decision science series. But let's take the of Nokia. You know what? All of us know
I
what
was thinking
happened
of
to
Nokia as an
Nokia, right?
example. Yes.
You were right. Okay, amazing.
Or even Netflix, like from DVDs to now streaming.
Imagine.
Imagine, right? So companies who have not really seen the trend smartly enough. Look at Apple. They saw the trends, and they became one of those companies with $1 trillion plus valuation, right? um, a trend that Nokia did not see, but Samsung saw. One
Samsung.
third of the growth that Samsung got was actually from people shifting from Nokia, right? So, and what happened to the Nokia employees, right? Poor guys, they had to go through a lot of disruptions, both in their personal and
That's
professional
true.
lives,
That's true.
right? So now that we understood that the company's product life cycle is very critical to a company's survival, and a company's survival is linked to our survival, the question then becomes that how do you really, no matter in what job family you are in,
Yes.
and here I've created very broadly four different sets of job families. Within that, there'll be subfamilies and sub-families. But no matter in which job we are in, we should be able to map exactly what KPIs should we be measured on, and how is it actually creating value for the business, and for which
For the
business
business.
KPI are we really going to be contributing. Now, those are the conversations, believe me, that the business partners would love to have, because people don't go to
Yes.
them with these kind of conversations, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Correct.
Okay, so now we start coming to the decision science framework, right? So, uh, decision science framework enables you to think through the KPIs which are important for the business, identify the KPIs which you should be measured on, and in DSF we talk of in metric and out metric, right? So the functional metric would be in metric. For example, for a HR BP, for a recruitment professional, uh, time to recruit, right, or turnaround time would be a in process metric, or as we call it, a
Yes.
in metric.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how much impact did that have on, maybe controlling the losses for the business is what, is a out metric that it would be linked to. So, for example, if previously you were spending, say, 10 lakh rupees in filling a role, but now due to some technology intervention or some other process intervention or organizational intervention, the cost of that comes down to, say, 4 lakhs. Now you have saved the company 6 lakh rupees.
So your cost
Number
per
two,
head becomes an out matrix in this regard.
exactly. And that is why we talk about outcome based thinking in our workshops, right? So,
Absolutely.
right. So now let's look at, so what is the decision science framework? So decision science framework is a collection of concepts, procedures, tools, and templates, which it helps narrow down what career choices you are. Remember, we started this entire conversation with point number one, which is how do you cut through the clutter, right? For a student wanting to enter the workforce, what career choices does he have the aptitude for, right? So the decision science framework helps students, young professionals, and established professionals understand that entire process. It will help you validate, are you on the right track? Do you need to fine tune, your career track, or do you need to drastically change? And this is based on a very exhaustive questionnaire that we ask all of our participants to take. And this is a question that
Sandeep,
would be.
I'll just cut you for a quick second because I wanted there was one part of the of those 10 tenets that we were talking about wherein I wanted
Mhm.
some inputs from Punita because that I thought was very relevant to what she does. So I'll just take a quick second to be able to pick her brains before we forget about that portion.
No,
So
no
we
worries. Let
spoke.
me go to that slide.
Sure.
Yeah,
So we were talking about excellent collaboration and communication as one of the five of the 10 tenets, right? And that is exactly what Punita excels in and does with Elan. I would want to quickly pick Punita's brains on this, and then we can get back to the amalgamation of this with what you were
perfect,
saying. Yeah,
perfect.
Sure. Thanks so much, Lakshmi. So basically, my whole approach and idea of collaboration and communication is such that the whole idea of any brand that is being built, you have to have the power of 4 C's, which is content, community, collaboration, and consistency. And that's the whole, and communication, 5 C's. And that's the whole idea of the 5 C's, where you collaborate with different creators, different brands for your brand to grow. You need to be very consistent for a brand or for an individual or for a professional who's building themselves. You need to focus towards building a community at large, like how we are working towards building a community at SkillsHACK. That's the third C. And the fourth C is most important, content. Whatever we put out there, the key is to create content to educate, empower, and inspire your audience. So that's the whole idea of collaboration and communication skills. Yes, Lakshmi.
fantastic. So, Sandeep, to pick up from there, Umesh, what are your thoughts on this one? And then we'll go back to because I would be very interested to, kind of amalgamate this whole thought process into the decision science ethos. So, Umesh, if you would to take up from what Punita is saying, how is that relevant in the space of upskilling and reskilling? Where are we faltering there?
See, I think there are two aspects which one needs to keep in mind. While upskilling, reskilling is something which is being spoken about, lately, it's been there since ages.
That's
Okay,
right.
and if you
Absolutely.
really look at the organizations which have institutionalized some of these processes, if I was to take example of some of the large FMCG players in India, or whether I would talk about Tatas or the Birlas, upskilling, reskilling, uh, cross working, moving talent across different businesses, different verticals has been something which has always been there. It's only for the new, some of the new age businesses, especially the startups, and also with the advent of technology and the digital piece which is coming, that we find that this is becoming more and more relevant
Relevant.
across different size scale of businesses, and hence there's a lot of being spoken about. And as rightly Sandeep did touch upon, how technology, or how we've seen different types of technology transformation in the last in about our generation, especially in the last about 20 years. It becomes all the more relevant, and hence it's not just about the technology only. It's also about the communication and the content.
That's
And
right.
I think while
That's right.
Sandeep's point in terms of decision making and how to go through the process scientifically becomes far more useful, because that way you are able to pinpoint some of the critical aspects very clearly. I think it's equally important in terms of how is it that we bring these kind of elements of data science and data decisioning uh, easily to different functions across. And I think, Sandeep, this is a huge opportunity, of making these aspects very simple and easy to grasp, and making sure people are able to use it across. And I think organizations are going to love some of these aspects, especially in the SME space, because
That's
they
right.
are a little averse. They have been a little averse to technology, but in the last 3 years, they've been pushed to the wall, and hence, you know,
They have to be
adoption of
adopters now.
technology has
Yes.
really come very easily to them because of necessity. And I think the way I would look at it is going through the 5E model of leadership, which spoke about. And that is something which we should use in order to let the leadership of some of these organizations focus at some of the aspects and then figure out what are the areas where you should be really, pinpointing and going forward. That's my couple of takeaways and sense from what Sandeep and Punita just spoke.
Sandeep, taking from what Umesh said, I would have a quick question that how do you
Mhm.
make it easy across functions? You know, what you were speaking about. How do you make it across functions, especially support functions? Because you very briefly touched upon that, support functions often lose to kind of, show relevance and
Mhm.
often maybe not show relevance, but articulate relevance. So,
Mhm.
how do you make that platform so easy to grasp across functions? And I think we have a question from Tushar, and he's asking what would be the top focus area if you could address that as well.
Okay. So the top focus area. So maybe if Tushar could expand on what he means by what would be the top focus area.
Tushar, top
But
focus area in anything in specific, or in which parlance are you kind of referring to top focus area? I would think in essence what he would be talking about is what we have been talking about here. And if he's looking at the slide right now, I think he would be in reference
Mhm.
to the slide. He might be asking that what would be the top focus areas and the ones articulated.
Hmm. Okay, I think what we'll do is just in the interest of time, let
Hmm.
me just quickly move forward and explain this decision science framework. And just so it's not just theory. So I'll keep your question in mind, Nilakshi, which is that
Sure.
how do we make this concept easy for, especially for support functions to consume?
That's right.
That was a question,
Sure.
wasn't it? Right? Yeah.
Yes, that's
So
right.
when we give these training programs, we don't distinguish between. I think all functions are very important, right? And we really break down the work that people do in terms
Mm-hmm.
of value. All right. So
Sure.
now HR will be having their own value chains, and you might see that one of the circles here is around value chains and associated processes.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing will have their own separate value chains. In many cases, the value chains will actually intersect and with each other.
It will.
Uh, and just to explain what these 9 different pillars of decision science mean, is my slide visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I will put this. I will. What I'll do is, since I believe a lot of our target audience today are from the HR community, let us put ourselves in the shoes of a HR BP, right? A HR business partner.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, just a quick aside. This concept of HR business partner was propagated by Dr. Dave Ulrich, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's
And
right.
and Dr. Ulrich and myself, we together conducted a training program with Jagmohan, sometime about a year or so back, which was very, very well received. So there
Mm-hmm.
also kind of touched upon this concept of decision science. Um, so really, the starting point for this entire cycle. By the way, this is put as 9 different circles. Don't think of these as sequential. Okay, you should probably think of these more as a network, right? You have flights moving from one point to another point, right? So think of these as networks. All of these circles are interconnected with each other. But if I had drawn it that way, then we would have missed the essence of the decision science. Now, that being
Mm-hmm.
said, everything starts with understanding the business needs. That is the first pillar, right?
Sure.
again, putting ourselves in the shoes of a HR business partner, and I'm using now these terms very carefully. These are formal terms we use in the decision science framework. We are now talking of the business domain equal to HR. And the business need here would be more around controlling attrition. Now, that's one theme. And the other is excellent workforce planning. There could be others, but just in the interest of time, I'm looking at the top two themes which any HR business partner would be held accountable for. Now, within that also, let's look at attrition, right? So, attrition, remember, is a theme. Within attrition, right, you could be measuring one KPI or you could be having multiple KPIs, and these need to be very formally defined. If you're having multiple KPIs, do you
Hmm.
have KPI on overall attrition versus regretted attrition, right? Are you
That's
measuring
right.
attrition by different segments? So very soon, the list of KPIs can actually expand, and we help the participant go through the process of understanding what KPIs are relevant for them, because really end of the day, anything which is more than 3 to 5 KPIs, people find it difficult to manage, right? But once you start going through this exercise, people end up with about 20, 30 KPIs, right? From 0 to 30 KPIs. So then we go through this diverge, converge process to finally end up with the top 3 to 5 KPIs, which are relevant for the people in that particular role, right? Now, so that is one, which is within the themes which you are measured on. In this case, workforce planning and attrition. What are the KPIs? Uh, what are the in metrics and the out metrics? Going back to our earlier example, if you have an attrition rate of 15%, what is that costing the organization? And there is enough research data out there within your companies and externally also benchmarking data that you can get to understand what is the cost of attrition. Now, attrition cost is basically two. One is the cost company of a role which is not being fulfilled, right? So there is nobody sitting, no warm body sitting and doing the stuff that needs to be done to whatever, to either increase revenue or reduce cost or whatever, right? So there is an impact to the business because of that. Number two is the cost of hiring somebody else. You need to get an external consultant, pay money, etc. Right? So within the business needs pillar, we talk of all these things. So in this case, it's the cost of attrition. Then number three is about mapping the areas. Again, a very unique term I'm using, areas, right? So within the HR space, there are at least 10 to 15 different areas within which we need to think. For example, compensation and benefits or CNB is one such area. Work-life balance is another such area, etc., etc. So once we have identified the areas, then you need to come up with a list of questions that you need to ask within each of those areas. And typically, we have seen in the HR space, specifically with respect to attrition modeling, there are about 35 to 40 different questions that we come up with at this point. These are standard list of questions. And then what does your gut say? Typically, in most cases, the HRBP will probably have a good sense as to where is the attrition highest, right? Is it with the millennials? Is it in a particular factory where you did not offer overtime as an option, but you offered overtime in some other factory? So people in this particular factory are just leaving because they felt that they needed that extra money.
Hmm.
So
So,
right, so these
Sandeep,
are educated hypotheses or
Sandeep,
hypotheses.
sorry to interject here,
Uh-huh.
but I think given the paucity of time, there's a very interesting, concept that you're taking us through. Given the paucity of time
Mhm.
that we just have about, a couple of minutes left, I think it's only
Sure.
fair that we also ask Punita to
Oh, yeah,
share
yeah,
her
absolutely. So I'll just
thoughts.
quickly hurry this up. Actually, business needs was the most important component. I think the others are fairly simple. I think that the main point I was trying to make over here was that consulting companies like McKinsey do a very good job. They have the frameworks for understanding the business needs. In our workshops, we teach those frameworks.
Hmm.
Once
Hmm.
that is done, right, and then understanding what is your data strategy, what is your data collection strategy to be able to answer the questions that we came up with. And then there is a separate area on exploratory data analysis and visualization. Again, there are over 50 different types of visualizations, one for each specific type of analysis you would want to do. Analytics modeling is all about the mathematical component, and the
Sandeep,
core.
tell me,
Yeah.
from a skills hack point of view, would it
Mhm.
be possible to have some of these modules placed as learning nuggets for about 40-45 minutes? Since Nilakshi was speaking about it, these seem to be a little elaborate, points.
Could you repeat that, Umesh?
I was trying to stitch it with how Nilakshi had started off by telling us a little about skills hack, and she was mentioning that the
Sure.
learning nuggets are in typically shorter form, and
Mhm.
hence I was just thinking, because the concepts which you're sharing, if you could have learning nuggets around these for about 30 to 35 minutes, I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, so that is
Make it
segueing into
If
the
this
next
can
slide.
be
So yes,
fragmentized into nuggets,
yes,
yes, yes,
yes.
I think that
It will.
that
That
would be
is
extremely useful.
that is a story I'm building, Umesh. So what I was trying to do over here was to just quickly go through the 9 pillars, which people will see in various shapes and forms in our 2 to 4 hour training modules.
Sure.
Let me just
Hmm.
conclude this just for the sake of continuity, since all of this is getting recorded. So analytics modeling was all about the maths component. Value chain, we talked about that we have value chains, and then we have underneath serving those value chains. We document all those in the workshops. The solutioning aspect is that when you're coming up with the actual solution, and you start with a whiteboard approach, and you come up with a fully baked solution, obviously there is a process which we need to go through. So what is that process? And then there is this entire project and program management piece, and then the research. To me, research is all about external scanning. Remember, we were talking about what is happening in the environment around us.
Environment
And
scanning,
research,
correct.
exactly. So research, exactly, that's the word. So research to me is about doing environmental scanning and also doing experimentation. A lot of the times, people would want to do various things within their organizations or outside as well with the consumers. Research, market research basically lives and breathes basically this particular pillar. And then we talked of communication, and we talked of the 30-second rule that some of the companies have. And there are various communication techniques. But really, if all of us, no matter in which job profile we are in, if we have a good idea of these 9 different pillars, then I think we are in a good place
This
from
is
a.
indeed extremely insightful, Sandeep, and something which we can probably kind of internalize and start kind of working on. So I would actually take concluding thoughts from Punita that there has been a lot said and done, and in a very elaborate manner, as to how this entire upskilling and reskilling can be made a part of our daily lives in a way that we break it down and then kind of start implementing them. Ayush had a good question, which if Sandeep, if you can respond to him on the chat, that would be excellent. He had a great question. Meanwhile, if Punita, you could kind of give me some concluding thoughts on this with the content marketing parlance.
So I truly feel with reference to content marketing, it's never going to die. It's just going to grow day after day, day after day. Hence, the whole keyword content marketing should be kind of explained to every brand, every professional, because it's required for your brand to grow organically. That's point number one. With reference to upskilling yourself in the space of content marketing, yes, there are multiple courses as well, but however, the whole idea of content marketing can help any individual grow organically, because it's all about putting yourself out there day after day, and just positioning yourself as to who you are, number one. And number two is the kind of problem you're looking at solving your audience. I think
Hmm.
once you kind of do that,
Hmm.
it's a win-win. So just about focusing on who you are and solving the problems of your audience through a course, through a product, through a brand, through anything. That's about it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But Punita, I would still like to spend another minute on what you really do on a day-to-day basis. And I kind of stuck to your tagline. I know you have a hard stop, so I'll just one last minute from
Yes,
you.
yes,
That if I were to go back to my young working professionals, right, the ones who are in, and they are the ones who have to, taking a cue from what Sandeep was saying, that you have to show your value, you have to communicate your value, right? And you do this day in and day out. What would be those one or two hacks that you would give to them, picking up from
yes.
the skills hack concept?
Yes. So, just to give you a background of my journey, I spent about 20 years in the corporate space doing content marketing with brands like CNBC and Times Network. And one fine day, I quit my job without having anything in hand because of the burnout and so forth. And I'm
Sure.
sure many young professionals in our 30s are facing
Are going
this.
through that life cycle,
Hence,
yes.
yes, hence it's extremely important to start working on a side hustle while your job is going on or while you're currently working at your 9 to 5 job, the top three hacks you should work towards creating a side hustle, be it anything, is number one, understanding your passion. Once you understand your passion, you'll exactly know that yes, you can do this every day of your life. Number two, your passion should work towards solving the problem of the audience. Otherwise, it's not worth it. And
Perfectly
number
said.
three, yes. And number three, is it viable? मतलब ये जो हम करना चाह रहे हैं, is it going to be viable for the next 5 years? Number three. So these are the three main key areas one should look in mind when you are looking at starting up a side hustle. But it's extremely important to kind of save your funds or save money for the next 6 months. So at least you can quit your job and then restart your journey. So, passion, most important, the problem you are solving, and obviously being in the market.
Beautifully put. Umesh, I would invite you for concluding comments, and then we can kind of bring this to a closure.
Before I do that, I just wanted
Yeah.
yeah. So I think there was this question pending from the audience from Ayush, right?
Yes, yes,
Wanting me to
yes, Sandeep.
respond to that. So the question is referring to one of the 10 tenets, specifically the one on employee over contractor mindset. How do you create and more important sustain this in a small organization where brand value might not be very significant? So I
Very
think
relevant.
Ayush, the point that I was making was actually somewhat different. And this point actually came from one of the ex-Microsoft senior VPs in HR, right? He was commenting on the current set of layoffs and talking of who are the people who are at least risk of losing their jobs. So the point he made was that contractors lose their job first, and then they look at cutting the jobs of the employees. I think this point seems to be referring to something else.
Okay, we'll kind of keep it at that. And Umesh, over to you.
So I think I'll add to what Punita was mentioning. I'll add two more points to it. One, we've always been known as, when we are working as working professionals with organizations, we're always known for the brands we represent.
That's right.
I think it's only fair and to be known as a personal brand ourselves. I think one needs to create your own personal
Beautiful
brand.
point. Yes.
Um, I think, and that's where all of the stuff which Punita mentioned is going to be there, and that's going to be on built on the fundamental foundation of being bloody good in what you are. You can't be. You
Skills.
can't be.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to be really knowing your cookies well, and I think that's what is going to be making the difference, and continuous learning. And fortunately, today we have enough and more opportunities to learn anywhere and everywhere. I think the way learning has been democratized in the last about 3 to 4 years has been so very different. Other Unlike
Absolutely.
in our good old days, where it
Unlike
was
in our
only
times, for
limited
sure.
to books and training programs. Today, it's learning on the go.
And I hope SkillsHack can contribute that in a major way with help from all of you, that we can further democratize learning, further enable learning, and make it easy and convenient for our learners and bring real value to their lives. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a very, very, fulfilling, enriching kind of a discussion, and wish we could have more, but I'm sure there will be more opportunities where we will dwell on more of this and have further discussions. Thank you so much, and see you again.
Thank you. Have
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank
God
you.
bless.